There are certain rules in the universe that we trust. Comets glow in faint cyan or green, a ghostly shimmer caused by simple molecules dancing in the sunlight. Stars burn in predictable fire, their light stretching across the void with order and precision. Even asteroids, those gray scars of rock, obey the silent laws of physics. But in the last few weeks, those rules were broken. The interstellar traveler known as 3I Atlas, once just another curiosity drifting through our skies, has revealed something no one was prepared for. Under the watchful eyes of not one, but 4 of our most advanced telescopes, the object shifted, almost deliberately, to a hostile crimson hue, a deep pulsating red that no natural comet should ever produce. It wasn't a discovery, it was an activation. A light switched on in the void, steady at first, then beating like a heart, once every 84.6 seconds. And now, what began as a cosmic mystery has become a source of controlled panic as scientists, intelligence agencies, and even the Space Force race to understand whether this was a signal, a warning, or something much worse. For months, 3I Atlas played the part of a normal comet. It was faint, fuzzy, a fragment racing through the solar system at nearly 100,000 miles per hour, its coma swelling as it neared the sun. Astronomers celebrated it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study material from another star system, a chance to peer into a history that stretched far beyond Earth. But then, without warning, everything changed. The first sign came from the Spitzer Space Telescope, which detected a sudden surge of heat radiating from the nucleus, a spike so sharp it suggested something inside the comet had ignited. Moments later, the James Webb Space Telescope confirmed the impossible. The greenish-blue halo of diatomic carbon faded, replaced by a deep, hostile red glow. In astrophysics, red can signal many things: tholins, complex organics, or Doppler stretching from extreme speed. But this wasn't any of those. The shade was too uniform, too controlled, as if the object had flipped a switch. To rule out error, other observatories were scrambled. The Hubble Space Telescope turned its gaze, and even the retired Kepler in its extended mission joined the watch. All 4 told the same impossible story. 3I Atlas was no longer reflecting sunlight. It was shining with its own crimson light, steady yet unnatural, like the first breath of something awakening in the dark. If the color change was shocking, the next revelation was terrifying. The light wasn't constant. It was pulsing, one beat every 84.6 seconds, a rhythm so precise it resembled the ticking of a cosmic clock. At first, scientists thought it was a rotation effect, perhaps the object spinning irregularly. But deeper analysis revealed something stranger. Each pulse contained hidden fluctuations, trillions of micro-variations woven inside the main signal, as though entire streams of information were compressed into single flashes of light. One cryptographer described it as finding a library hidden inside a heartbeat. This was not random noise. This was structure, order, and intention. Suddenly, the comet ceased to be an astronomical curiosity and became a matter of national security. Within hours, the data was forwarded to Vandenberg Space Force Base, where a classified task force, Project Icarus, was convened. Their mission shifted from science to survival: figure out what 3I Atlas was, what it wanted, and whether it posed a threat. And for the first time, military analysts and codebreakers were staring not at intercepted emails or radar scans, but at a blood-red pulse echoing through the night sky. As Project Icarus pored over the data, more anomalies emerged. Radar imaging showed the object wasn't behaving like a solid body. At times, it absorbed signals entirely, vanishing from detection like a stealth bomber. At other times, it flared with impossible intensity, bouncing radar back stronger than any rock or ice ever could. Worse still was its thermal profile. While its surface glowed with searing energy, its core registered just 3 degrees above absolute zero, colder than nearly anything in the universe. It was like finding a roaring fire frozen solid at its heart, a paradox that defied the laws of thermodynamics. This was the moment doubt gave way to dread. No natural body could behave this way. This wasn't a dirty snowball from another star. It was something else entirely, a machine cloaked as a comet, using the sun's energy to shed its disguise, to reveal its true form, and perhaps to begin its real mission. And if it could manipulate heat and light so casually, what else could it do? For weeks, analysts waited for the final proof, and it came when 3I Atlas passed the orbit of Mars. According to physics, Mars's gravity should have tugged slightly on its trajectory, bending it by a measurable degree. But the tug never came. The comet sailed on unaffected, as though the planet didn't exist. The implication was staggering. The object was actively resisting the pull of gravity, something no technology on Earth can achieve. Our rockets are explosions strapped to metal, brute force against nature. This was something else entirely, a construct that could walk through the most fundamental law of the universe as though it were optional. For Project Icarus, this was the final confirmation. 3I Atlas was not a comet. It was not natural. It was under intelligent control. And that realization forced the darkest questions of all. If it has revealed itself now, it is because it wanted to. If it could have hidden forever but chose instead to glow red, to pulse with impossible signals, then this isn't an accident. It is a message. But the question remains, is it a warning, an invitation, or the first move of something far more terrifying? The heartbeat of 3I Atlas quickly became the most analyzed signal in human history. Supercomputers in the US, Europe, and Asia were tasked with breaking it down, frame by frame, photon by photon. What they uncovered only deepened the dread. Each pulse of crimson light wasn't just brighter or dimmer. It contained layers of modulation, like ripples hiding within a wave. These ripples repeated at ratios that resembled prime numbers, mathematical structures that nature rarely produces without guidance. To engineers, it looked like a transmission. To cryptographers, it looked like an encrypted message. But the strangest part came when different telescopes, separated by continents, recorded subtle variations in the signal. The comet's pulse seemed to adapt depending on who was watching. To one instrument, the fluctuation pattern shifted slightly. To another, it rearranged in new intervals, as though the object were sampling its observers. Imagine a mirror that doesn't just reflect your image, but changes depending on who is standing in front of it. That is what 3I Atlas appeared to be doing. It wasn't speaking to humanity. It was studying humanity, tailoring its signal in response to our gaze. Inside the sealed chambers of Project Icarus, panic and fascination collided. Every new data set reinforced the same conclusion. 3I Atlas was no natural body. But how do you explain that to the world without sparking hysteria? Publicly, NASA's updates became bland, reducing the crimson glow to unexpected reflectivity. ESA spoke vaguely of anomalous spectroscopy. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Space Force deployed assets never acknowledged before. Satellites designed to map deep space energy fluctuations, now pointed directly at the object. What they found was chilling. The crimson glow wasn't radiating equally in all directions. It was anisotropic, stronger along specific vectors that rotated with time, almost like a scanning beam. It wasn't just broadcasting. It was sweeping, probing, as if searching for something or waiting for a reply. And still, through all the noise, the one constant was silence. No one dared reveal the truth. The object's pulse continued, the data piled up, and the public was left with fragments while those on the inside whispered the same fear. Whatever this is, it's not just passing through. It has business here. The moment of absolute confirmation came not from light, but from motion. As the object moved deeper into the solar system, its path defied not only the tug of Mars, but also the subtle influence of Jupiter's gravity. Analysts plotted its trajectory against Einstein's equations, against Newton's, against the most advanced orbital mechanics we possess. None fit. It wasn't just ignoring gravity, it was navigating space in a way that suggested mastery of it. This realization split the scientific community into factions. Some argued that 3I Atlas was propelled by technologies we couldn't dream of, perhaps manipulating space-time itself. Others claimed it was not moving through our universe in the same way we do it all, but phasing through it, using our laws of motion only when convenient. Either way, the conclusion was unavoidable. We were not dealing with matter as we understand it. 3I Atlas wasn't just challenging our models. It was showing us that the universe has deeper rules it follows, and hides from us until moments like this. In its crimson glow, the cosmos wasn't just revealing a mystery, it was revealing our ignorance. As data poured in, theories spread faster than the pulses themselves. The lighthouse theory suggested that the object wasn't for us at all, but a galactic beacon, activated now because something far worse was on the way, a warning system from civilizations long gone. The harbinger theory took a darker path, proposing that the crimson light marked the beginning of a process, the release of microscopic machines designed to seed or transform worlds, a slow-motion colonization plan playing out before our eyes. But the most unsettling of all was the litmus test theory. According to this, everything we had witnessed, the disguise as a comet, the sudden shift in color, the precise pulses, the resistance to gravity, was never about communication. It was about us, about testing how humanity responds when faced with the impossible. Do we panic? Do we unite? Do we ignore it? If that is the case, then 3I Atlas is not just a visitor. It is an examiner, watching us like lab subjects. And the crimson glow we see in the sky may not be the signal itself, but the record of our reaction, written into the cosmos for someone, somewhere, to study. As the days passed, scientists began to notice something even stranger. The interval of 84.6 seconds, the heartbeat of 3I Atlas, began to show slight but measurable resonance with natural cycles on Earth. Seismologists observed microtremors in certain fault zones that appeared to echo the same rhythm, almost as if the ground itself were subtly vibrating in harmony with the comet's crimson pulse. Radio astronomers, too, reported interference patterns in low-frequency bands that matched the object's timing, as if the signal was bleeding into Earth's magnetic environment. These findings were controversial, even ridiculed, but the evidence kept mounting. Imagine a cosmic metronome ticking in the sky, its beat syncing with the most fragile systems of our planet. If this resonance continues, what happens when the object grows closer, when the pulses grow stronger? Earth may not just be an observer of this phenomenon, it may already be part of it. While Earth reeled with anomalies, Mars offered its own warnings. Orbiters around the red planet detected unusual auroras shimmering across its thin atmosphere, far brighter than any solar activity alone could explain. At the same time, instruments from the InSight lander, still relaying seismic data, picked up Marsquakes that coincided suspiciously with the comet's pulses. Mars has no global magnetic field to shield it, making it more vulnerable to disturbances carried by plasma. If 3I Atlas's crimson beacon can shake Mars at a distance, what will happen when its influence sweeps across Earth more directly? To planetary scientists, this was confirmation of their worst fears. The object is not localized in its effects. It is not passive. It is interacting with planets, atmospheres, and even crusts. The red planet has already trembled in its presence. Earth may be next. As amateur astronomers tracked the comet's transformation, many noticed that official datasets began disappearing. Spectroscopy records that once appeared freely on public archives were suddenly redacted. Space weather bulletins describing anomalies in the solar wind were edited hours later with neutral language. Seismological reports from Venezuela and the Mediterranean, where strange quakes were recorded, were quietly removed from global databases. At first, this seemed like coincidence or clerical error, but the pattern was too consistent. The information that linked 3I Atlas's crimson pulses with terrestrial or solar disturbances was being erased. Insiders whispered that governments feared panic, that acknowledging a connection between a hostile interstellar visitor and Earth's trembling systems would be catastrophic for global stability. But the silence had the opposite effect. With every missing report, suspicion grew, and people turned to leaked data, amateur observations, and whispers from insiders to piece together a picture that was darker than any official announcement could ever admit. With every unanswered question, new theories emerged, darker, more terrifying than before. Some claimed that 3I Atlas was a sleeper probe, dormant until triggered by the sun's energy, now awakening to broadcast its presence across the galaxy. Others believed it was part of a larger fleet, a vanguard meant to test planetary systems before something greater arrived. The most chilling theory, however, was that its color shift to crimson was not for us at all, but for others, a beacon signaling that it had found intelligent life here. The pulse, in this view, was less a message to Earth than a flare to the cosmos declaring, "There is something here worth noticing." If true, then we may not just be under observation. We may have been reported. And the real question is not what 3I Atlas is, but what, or who, will answer its call. As telescopes refined their scans of 3I Atlas, its structure began to betray something deeply unnatural. At first, the object appeared as a jagged shard, a fractured block of rock and ice. But high-resolution radar revealed outlines that shifted over time, as if its geometry wasn't fixed. Some frames showed sharp triangular patterns, others suggested a lattice running through its interior, a skeletal design rather than a solid body. Even stranger, different instruments reported different shapes, as though the object presented a different face depending on who was watching. Natural objects don't do this. Ice doesn't reconfigure itself into symmetry. Rock doesn't adapt to its observers. Only machines disguise themselves, shifting form to evade recognition. The chilling implication was that 3I Atlas wasn't hiding from us. It was testing us, choosing when to reveal glimpses of its true shape and when to cloak itself in chaos. And the deeper we looked, the more it seemed to be looking back. Then came the echo. Deep space listening arrays in California and Australia picked up a faint but distinct signal that matched the heartbeat of 3I Atlas. But it didn't come from the object's coordinates. It came from empty space between Earth and Mars, a corridor where nothing was supposed to be. At first, scientists dismissed it as interference, but repeated detections confirmed the anomaly. The signal was bouncing back, mirroring the crimson pulse in real time, like a relay hidden in the void. Some theorized that 3I Atlas wasn't acting alone, that a secondary body, invisible to telescopes, cloaked from our sensors, was traveling alongside it, amplifying its presence. Others suggested something more terrifying, that space itself was being bent or manipulated, turned into a conduit for the signal. If true, then the crimson pulses weren't just light in the sky. They were threads in a web we were only beginning to glimpse, a web designed to ensnare worlds like ours. As the crimson light grew brighter, stories began to spread among researchers who had studied the data too closely. Some spoke of vivid dreams filled with alien skies, where a blood-red horizon loomed over landscapes they had never seen before. Others described sudden flashes of intuition, symbols and numbers forming in their minds without explanation, as if thoughts were being seeded directly into their consciousness. One physicist confessed in a leaked audio file that he no longer felt alone when observing the signal, but as if something vast was looking back, inside me, rearranging how I think. Neuroscientists began to test exposure in controlled conditions and discovered faint synchronization between brainwaves and the object's pulse frequency. What had seemed like harmless light from a distant comet was beginning to resonate inside human minds. Whether this was communication or invasion, no one could say. But the line between observing and being observed had already begun to blur. Meanwhile, the world outside remained largely unaware. Public reports downplayed the red glow as an optical anomaly, the pulse as natural variability, and the radar echoes as instrumental noise. But those closest to the data knew better. They watched as their reports were stripped from public archives, as their analyses were reworded to remove alarming conclusions, as their own words were buried under layers of bureaucratic denial. Silence became the official response, but silence in the face of a phenomenon this vast feels less like reassurance and more like confirmation. The authorities are not saying nothing because there's nothing to say. They are saying nothing because the truth is too destabilizing to release. And so the crimson beacon continues to burn in the sky, its pulse steady, its influence spreading, while humanity is left in the dark, waiting, wondering, fearing what comes next. By early October, something undeniable was happening. The pulse of 3I Atlas no longer seemed confined to the void. Seismographs around the world picked up subtle oscillations, a low hum buried beneath the noise of Earth's natural tremors, beating at nearly the same rhythm as the comet's 84.6-second cycle. At first, this was dismissed as coincidence or equipment error, but when instruments on different continents, from Japan to Chile, from Iceland to South Africa, began to show the same anomaly, the doubts faded. The Earth itself seemed to be vibrating in sympathy with the crimson signal. Some scientists warned that resonance is one of the most dangerous forces in physics. A glass shatters not because a sound is loud, but because the frequency matches perfectly. A bridge collapses not because of wind, but because the oscillation aligns with its natural rhythm. If Earth is being pulled into resonance with something not of this world, then the consequences may not come as one catastrophic event, but as a slow, escalating cascade of instability. Every tremor, every aurora, every unexplained blackout could be the first steps of a system slipping into harmony with an alien pulse. Inside the halls of Project Icarus, the theories grew darker. Analysts who once argued about whether 3I Atlas was a natural comet had stopped debating that entirely. The new question was far more unsettling. Why now? Why reveal itself in crimson light at this exact moment in human history, with 4 telescopes watching and our planet more interconnected than ever before? Was the timing random or deliberate? Some feared it was a countdown, a stage in a process that would culminate only when the resonance reached a threshold we could not yet imagine. Others believed it was bait, a signal designed to lure us into pointing our most advanced instruments, our satellites, our curiosity, directly at it, so it could study us in return. And the most paranoid voices, the ones that grew harder to dismiss with every passing day, whispered that the hostile glow wasn't the beginning of communication at all. It was the beginning of colonization, a test run before others followed. In the end, the fear wasn't just about what 3I Atlas had already done. It was about what it was preparing to do, and the sinking realization that humanity might already be too late to stop it. What began as a faint interstellar blur has become the most terrifying revelation in modern history. 3I Atlas was supposed to be a comet, a dirty snowball from another star system, harmless, passive, an object for textbooks and lectures. Instead, it has torn through every definition we trusted, shifting its light to an unnatural crimson, pulsing with impossible rhythm, bending the laws of physics, and now resonating with Earth itself. 4 telescopes confirmed it. The data is irrefutable. And yet, silence is the only answer the world has been given. Perhaps that silence is the most damning proof of all. Because those who hold the complete information, the analysts of Project Icarus, the cryptographers decoding the crimson pulse, the astronomers who first saw the impossible shift, know that this isn't just astronomy anymore. This is contact. Not the kind of contact we dreamed of, not hopeful signals across the stars, but something colder, more deliberate, more hostile. An intelligence testing us, studying us, synchronizing us into its rhythm. And so the crimson beacon burns on, indifferent to our fear, beating every 84.6 seconds like the ticking of a clock. Maybe it is a countdown. Maybe it is a summons. Maybe it is both. All we know for certain is that Earth has already begun to answer, trembling in its crust, pulsing in its oceans, whispering in its magnetic field. The resonance is here, growing stronger, and whatever waits at the end of it is no longer a question of if, only of when. 3I Atlas is not just a visitor. It is a mirror, reflecting back the fragility of our science, the arrogance of our certainty, and the terrifying truth that the universe does not play by our rules. And if the color red is a warning, then humanity may have already crossed a line it was never meant to. The glow is no longer distant. It is part of us now, and the world may never be the same again.